I can't say that I'm a person that I don't read reviews or whatever. Not as much anymore, just because I don't know. It doesn't really matter to me, and but it is, I'd be lying if I said I don't want to see what people's reactions are, and it is very validating, even for the new record, of seeing like a review or talking to you or someone where like they'll pick up on a reference that we put in there, like, oh hey, this part, like I kind of getting like a certain vibe from this, and I'm like, exactly, that's intentional.
Hey, how's it going? You are here for Heavy Art Talk. As usual, it's your host, Lee. Today, I have Chase Mason joining me today. And yeah, I'm sure you guys are aware, Chase is the vocalist frontman for Gatecreeper, but beyond that, he's also an artist and designer. So if you guys are joining to hear about music, I'm sure that is going to come up naturally. But we're going to try to spice things up too and talk a lot about visual art, things we're inspired by, and just kind of like other illustrators probably in the scene too. But without further ado, let me welcome Chase. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. So
thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, dude. I watched a couple interviews just ahead of this, so I was trying to like not repeat things too much, but naturally I'm sure it'll happen.
Cool. Yeah, I watched some of your videos too. That's, I hit you up about the Hayden one, or maybe I watched the Hayden one, I watched the Josh ones. There's a lot of people that have been on the show that we have worked with, or I've worked with for Gatecreeper. So it's super interesting for me to watch. I love to like nerd out about specific things, whether it's music or art or whatever. So like we can talk about whatever you want. But yeah, I think that I think what you're doing is really cool.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, and like it's really cool. I like having folks that are musicians as well as visual artists too, because a lot of times there's so much of a parallel, even in like the mindset of like writing a song is similar to writing or creating, an art piece. Like it's not that different when you're actually the one creating it. That's what I've learned through this, at least.
Yeah, for sure.
Just kind of starting out, like you got a little bit of a break before you kick off on tour again. You've been listening to anything, metal or non-metal just lately that you want to talk about?
So last year we pretty much took the whole year off to do our record, and when I'm in that mode, I'm trying to absorb a lot of media that influences me. So during that time when I'm working on our record, I'm listening to a lot of metal and listening to a lot of stuff that is influencing the band and stuff that I want to take reference from. So I was definitely just consuming and searching and just really revisiting records. Like there was for this time period and like this era of the band, I was really inspired by a lot of records from death metal bands, like when they started to not be a death metal band anymore. And there's so many examples of that, whether it's Swedish bands or a lot of the Finnish bands are like that, like Sentence, Amorphous, even Entombed and Dismember, all those bands, they all have like a record that is kind of like a changing point, where they might be evolving into something completely different, but there's that record that's kind of sits in between, Dismember, Massive Killing Capacity is one that's like always a reference of mine. Like, our band was started based off that album pretty much. So
it's a classic, man. It's awesome.
Yeah. And those are always, there's a little bit of revisionist history happening. I'm 37, but I wasn't alive or, conscious of what was happening in the early 90s and all the stuff that I like. So say like an album like Heartwork, I can read about it. I can talk to people that were around at the time and see what it was like. But I know that when a record like that came out, people were like, oh, this is too melodic, or, Carcass changed. Now everybody looks at it as like an absolute classic, which it is. But A lot of those albums, of that style where the band is changing a little bit is super interesting to me. And even if it's not good, like even like Celtic Frost, Cold Lake, I think it's a cool record, like you listen to it, I don't know, you take it out of context of being a Celtic Frost record and it's like a weird hair metal record. Same with
Yeah.
like, have you ever listened to the Entombed album Same Difference? It's like has a
No,
dog on it.
I
It's just
haven't.
very like 90s. It sounds like Unsane or something like that. Like noise rock kind of. And if you listen to it in the context of an Entombed record, you're like, oh, this is not what I want. But if you listen to it like, oh, this is just a different band, it's cool. So I've been revisiting a lot of bands' discographies and like, oh, maybe I skipped over this album, or bands that have huge discographies. Like say a band like Hypocrisy, the Swedish band. They have a huge discography, and they're always a band that I thought was cool, but I never really like super latched onto. So my listening habits, I'll be like, I'm gonna listen to every Hypocrisy record in order. That's
Yeah.
how I do it. But now that the record is kind of in hindsight, and I've got a little bit of an overload, and I'm kind of like in burnout mode. Like
Yeah.
once the record is done, like I haven't touched the guitar since we finished the record because I don't play guitar in the live band, so I don't have to. And yeah, I think my music choices naturally change to something that's like not metal. Especially
Yeah.
on tour too. When you're at a show every day, at a metal show every day, you don't want to get in your bunk at night and listen to metal. So one that I have been listening to very like recently as of that this week is the band The Cardigans, which
Oh yeah, dude.
I have a weird history with the band because my uncle, who is partially responsible for like introducing like a guitar into my life, um, he randomly was a big fan of the Cardigans like in the 90s, and this was before that song Love Fool was like huge. I think it was already out, but they hadn't like, I think that Romeo and Juliet movie was a huge thing for the
With the
band
guns
because
and stuff.
they were on the
Yeah.
soundtrack. Um, but my uncle took me and my brother. It was like the first date with his now wife, I believe. He took me and my brother. I think I was like maybe 9 or 10, and he took us to see the Cardigans at this club here in Tempe that doesn't exist anymore. And I liked him, and I didn't really, because my uncle liked him. I went and like bought all their CDs and everything, and I I didn't even really know who Black Sabbath was at that point. But the Cardigans have a Black Sabbath cover on every one of their
Sabbath, Bloody
albums, or at least
Sabbath.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they have an Iron Man cover on that record that has Love Fool on it. So um, I was kind of like subliminally exposed to Black Sabbath before I even knew it. But I hadn't listened to him for a super long time, but I don't know. I came across it, and I just been revisiting. It's really good. And I also, some trivia that I would like to uncover is that I've seen several times online, like references that members of the band, like the guitar or bass players, were in like, it'll just say like black and death metal or something like that. And then being from Sweden, I'm like, I need to find like, there's got to be like a demo or one of their bands that is out there. I've never been able to crack the case.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. And you bring up some cool topics too. It's kind of similar in the vein of like a band changing. I never reached for Chaos AD by Sepultura, but I put that on this week, and I was like, holy shit, this thing's like, yeah, it's a little more groove metal, but like it's like the best groove metal, so it's like pretty freaking good.
Yeah,
I love all the percussion on that album. It's so cool, very
yeah,
inventive.
yeah. No, that's a good example. That would probably be, that's before Roots, when they
Yeah,
went like, kind of leaned fully into like new metal sort of vibes. And so Chaos AD definitely has that, but it's more like proto new metal, where groove metal or whatever it is. So the Sepultura discography is awesome because like they're different albums. You're like, this spawned its own subgenre. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
exactly, man. And kind of related to Cardigans was like a late '90s hit. I'm similar generation, and like sometimes just like hang out with the wife, it's like fun to put on something nostalgic. I put on Sugar Ray, and one of their albums opens up
Lord.
with like it. What was that?
It's called Floored.
Maybe it's
'Cause
the
I
opening
definitely had that
track, but
CD.
it sounds like Death Clock. Have you heard
Is
that?
is it called RPM? It has like
Yeah,
car noises in it. Yeah. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, I had that CD, man. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Fucking crazy, dude. I don't know though, man. It's the late '90s pop hits. Like it's like in my DNA, man. Brings me back to being like 5, 6. So it's hard not to like yearn for it a little bit. But it's a completely different part of my brain than that's what's dissecting metal in most cases.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's certain things that our brain just likes, whether it's because it's nostalgic for us, or there's just, songwriting formats or melodies or whatever that our brains just like. Just
For
this
sure.
is what it is.
Well, you're talking a little bit about guitar. So do you use the guitar basically as an instrument to write within Gatecreeper, or were you performing on the record? Like, how does
I
that work?
didn't. Yeah, I write guitar stuff for Gatecreeper.
Okay.
But this record was the first time that I didn't play at all. Like, on every Gatecreeper record previously, I'd played some sort of stringed instrument at some point. So either I was playing guitar and or bass or something like that. This is actually the first record where I didn't track a single instrument.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I've seen you guys a couple of times. Did you used to play guitar and do vocals live, or was it always just vocals? I'm trying to remember because I've seen you since like 2018. I think that's when I probably first saw you. 2017,
Um,
2018.
I've never played a show with the band playing guitar. When
Okay.
we started the band, I was originally just going to play guitar, and we were going to have someone else sing. And it didn't work out, and I just kind of assumed the role. But we did do a live. Uh, it's like a music video, but it's like a live session of two of our like the Doom songs, so Emptiness and Absence of Light. And for that, because Emptiness has like three guitar harmonies and stuff, the only way that we could actually play it live and do it like how we wanted to do it was for me to play guitar. And I think it was really cool. I had fun doing it. It was a cool project. It was kind of like it was still COVID time. So, bands were doing live streams and stuff. So that's kind of the era that we did that in. But I would like to eventually, you know, sometime down the road have a set or like a part of our set where, I bust out the guitar and we play some of those songs. But also some of the songs that we need to do that on are songs that really wouldn't work for our normal lives. Like playing Emptiness is like, 11 or 12-minute song. That just doesn't make sense in our set as it is.
And that's the last track on that Closed Casket record you guys did, right? Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that one. And then speaking of COVID, dude, when you guys had that show, you released that sand kind of beige shirt with like the different logo. I love that shirt, man. It's like different than anything else you guys have done. I thought it was
Yeah.
like really bold move. I love it a lot.
Thanks, man. I try to stay away from the like rips and, tribute sort of like designs and, even like a novelty sort of design. But for that, like that like motif of it's a dry heat is a very classic, like see them at all the gift shops or whatever it is. So I'm like, this makes sense. We're an Arizona band. Like we need to tap in with this.
Have you
We're
always
actually going to
lived
bring
in
that.
Arizona then?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. I was going to say that we actually never sold those shirts like at a show. It was only for online, but I think we're going to bring it back for something like we might make like koozies or something with it.
Oh yeah, that'd be a good idea.
That design was done by a guy named Perry Shaw in
Perry
Philadelphia.
Shaw?
He does. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And like, we could talk about it now, but like the amount of connections and different artists you've commissioned, I can't think of another person or band in this scene that's done that. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like an overarching thing, but have you kind of always been that way in terms of just like gravitating towards like always trying to keep current and like find different types of artists? Because like your taste is, when to like lean into some metal stuff, but like you like, in terms of what you curate, you play around a lot. And I don't know if that's kind of an abstract question for the audience, but I think you catch my drift. Like, it doesn't have to be obviously metal for it to capture your interest and then kind of be used as like Gatecreeper imagery.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I appreciate that you notice that sort of stuff because yes, it is something that I have a great interest in and I spend a lot of time on. So I'm not really, when you're working on something, like at the end of the day, I just, as far as band stuff, art stuff, like I just do what needs to be done. I'm trying to kick the can down the road a little bit more every day. If there's something that I can do to help my band, or if I can make it easier for everyone else in my band, that they just have to, like, they don't have to worry about that stuff. They can just show up because everybody's on the ball. Everyone in my band, everybody, knows what they need to do. So like, we have a show next week and we haven't played together or even been together for the past 2 months. But even if we didn't practice at all, we could show up to that show and it would be fine and just play because everyone does what they need to do. And my part in the band in doing what I need to do is making sure that everything looks cool, and that's an assumed role. We never had our first band practice. It wasn't like, okay, you're going to do this and you're going to do this. It was just like, I like that stuff. So I just started doing it. And, luckily the people in my band, they have faith in me now, and they trust that, they don't have to worry about it. And when we show up on tour, we're going to have sick merch, and that's all the validation that I need, is that, people think that, what we're doing is cool, like that's there needs to be people to support what we're doing. And so in turn, I try to give people a lot of cool stuff if they want it, like, because that's what I like. I like shirts, I like records, I like tapes, I like whatever it is, like I like to collect things, and I know that most people in metal like to do the same. So like my very, basic business model is just like give the people what they want, or at least, going off of what do I want? What do I think is cool? Like, what if I liked a band, if I saw that they, put out this shirt or whatever it is, like you said, it kind of lean into my interests a little bit and like what I think is cool and what I think is metal. It doesn't have to be exactly whatever the stereotypical metal imagery is. And honestly, I really enjoy finding artists that are like kind of on the fringe a little bit. They might be like more kind of like an indie artist or whatever it is. But if I reach out to them and give them like good direction on our end and reference their own stuff and be like, hey, here's the stuff that of yours that I like. And then we meet in the middle. It's like, hey, here's what Gatecreeper is. Here's what you do. Let's meet in the middle. And that's always cool because it looks unique. It doesn't look like every other band stuff. And these flyer projects that I've been doing are very involved, and I'm in the middle of one right now. So we have that tour coming up with Frozen Soul and Worm, and there's 20 plus shows, maybe like 25. And I've commissioned, as of yesterday, I've fully commissioned every single show for a different artist.
Awesome.
And sometimes I'll fill in the gaps a little bit of, in a pinch, I can make the flyer, or, I sign myself one or two of them. But it's just a really good opportunity to like work with people because it's, it helps the show. People, it draws attention to the show. And, I get to pay an artist that I like with. I get to work with an artist that I work with. And the only, what we do for the flyers is, I commission an artist to pay and pay them to make a flyer. Sometimes I'm involved. Sometimes I help with the layout a little bit, or sometimes they just fully give me a completed one. And then at the show, we post that to promote the show. But then before the tour, I will go and get printed copies of the posters, not screen printed, but at least like, good prints, good color prints. And then we only do like 20 or 25 of them, and we have them at our merch table and we all sign them. And as long as people buy those posters, then it's all paid for. So like, as long as people are willing to buy these posters at the show, then I can afford to pay 20 different artists to do the flyer. So there's like a whole ecosystem that's happening that is really cool. And like, it takes a lot of work, and there's a lot of people involved, but that's what makes it really cool.
Yeah, man. I can only imagine, like, most artists and illustrators, on top of their shit, right? Deadlines and everything. But like to manage 20 different artists at one single time, that's a lot of logistics. Like that's like project planning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you like
And
Excel spreadsheets, or you just kind of keep track of it, via your email?
um, that's a good question. So as far as like logistics wise and like management wise of the band, I'm a pretty capable person where I can like keep everything up in my head. Like
Yeah.
if I had to put it on paper, it wouldn't make sense, but I have it all figured out. But a couple years ago, we got a manager just because the management side or the back end side of the band was its own full-time job, aside from writing music or making art or whatever. So we needed to have a management company to help us with things. And me trying to hand off the duties, of like, here's, handing over the Gatecreeper manual, it took a couple years to fully like, lock in. But and now I work for. I've been given the opportunity to work for the management agency that manages our band, and now I work with the other bands on this roster and the other managers at the agency, helping their other bands do what I do for Gatecreeper. So it's getting new merch, getting flyers, getting whatever. So on top of the flyer projects I have for Gatecreeper or whatever things I have on for Gatecreeper, I also have another 20 plus artists that I'm working with for other bands.
It's awesome, man. Very impressive. And I mean, it's a testament to like, you guys are what, on year 11? So like you figured out a lot of shit as you grow, because it's like, of course the music develops and that's its own thing, like the artistry, but like I appreciate the business side, or just like the professionalism side that comes with it too, like making a bigger stage production, all that stuff. Like I know how much
That's
goes
something
into
we're
that,
working
so
on
it's
right
awesome,
now.
man. Yeah.
Um,
Go ahead.
we're working on that too. Like that's something for us in our band where we're always trying to like level up a little bit. Not, we don't skip steps or anything, but there's certain time we're like, all right, we're at this point, we got to step it up. We got to put on a show. So we actually have, commissioned a friend. He's building us these like big stage props and stuff like that. So it's just another extension of the visual aspect of everything that, yeah, I think there's just so much to do. If you're in a band and or like any sort of creative career or collective, like I truly enjoy always having something to do. Always
Yeah.
something to work on. Being in a band is like there's always something that you can do if you want to. If you're trying to like make shit happen, there's always something to do. There's always something to tinker with. There's always shirt design to be made or whatever it is. So it's like it's an excuse to just be creative constantly. Like every day I try to do something for the band, and sometimes there's lots of boxes are checked in one day. Like right now I'm starting to get a lot of the flyers back, and I'm like, I'm trying to get them ready to be able to post it. But it's cool. We're working on, we just finished doing we made a documentary for when we were making our
Oh,
record.
nice.
So I've been trying, along with the graphic design stuff and obviously writing music and getting all that dialed in. I've also tried to have every other thing in house. So like doing photos and doing videos. We do a lot of that ourselves, like to do like film photos, even if it's just like a point and shoot camera, film photos, or like I have a Sony VHS or high 8 camera that I use, which I have to have a million different type of cords just to like digitize it. But so it's not streamlined at all. Like it's not logistically sound. Trying to make tour videos or like post live updates using analog formats is not easy. So
Yeah.
that's one hurdle, and that's one thing that people don't understand. Or I'm not even talking about outside people. I'm talking about people within the music industry. It is a business, and sometimes you have to fight for like this is what I want to do because it's art and it's creative, not because this is what I want to do. This is how much money it's going to come back from it. Like if you want to do something creative and not even outside the box by normal standards, but outside the box by whatever industry standards, you have to be prepared to fight and explain why this means a lot to you and why this is valuable to you, not just like this is X amount of dollars that it will bring in.
Definitely. In long-term investments at the end of the day too, you know, for these kind of things. Like building a brand takes years and consistency.
Yeah. And that's a tricky subject because, you know, anytime you mix art and business, there's people have varying opinions. And also, you know, talking about your band is like a brand, you know, that might be the reality and that might actually be what you're doing, but like, that feels corny for me to say, or, you know, it's the same thing as like, you know, I've never really referred to myself as an artist, you know, even if I've been doing graphic design for other bands or whatever, just because I learned how to do it for my own band and I learned how to do it for a full function. You know, like I didn't start doing art just for art's sake. It was like I needed to make something for my band, or, you know, it started when I was in like a teenager and like learning how to make websites for my bands that I had, or, you know, like a GeoCities or Angel Fire website. So there's always like, you know, a kind of do it yourself or at least self-taught thing for me where, you know, learning how to play guitar or whatever it is, you learn the basics. And then I would go to a show and I would see a band and I'd be like, I can do that. I'm like watching the guitar player. I'm like, oh, that's how you do it. Oh, okay. All right. And then I go home and I just like figure it out, you know? So I think if you have the like, initiative to like, just like, I'm going to figure this out, you know? And if it's not that hard, especially now, like anything you could possibly, any question you could possibly have, you just type into Google and you'll find an answer to, you know?
Yeah.
Like if you're stuck in a program, say you're working in Photoshop, I have a lot of friends that I could be like, hey, yo, how do you do this? Or you just Google it and then I find it out and I'm like, why didn't I do that 3 years ago when I've been doing it this really stupid way for so long?
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. And when I talk about the business side, the brand side, I think to me, the biggest overlap in what you're hitting on, tell me if you disagree, it's ultimately, you know, intentional effort. Intentional effort, it's creating good music or music that pushes you. And then also everything that comes into like building a band. So that's how I ultimately see it too. Cause I don't, you know, we're not fucking wearing suits right now. You got a carcass shirt, I'm an autopsy shirt, you know, like you can think like that without being a fucking cheeseball.
Yeah. No, don't get me wrong. It is a business. And if you want to like make a living off of it, you have to look at it like that. Like I'm definitely running a business. No question about it. But it's a creative business. It's not like just about dollars and cents. And for me, my outlook on things recently has just been like, you know, I want to have a body of, you know, 10 years from now, I want to look back and have a body of work that still holds up, like flyers, record covers, good songs, good videos, whatever it is. Like, I don't want the body of work to look back and be like, oh, they're TikToks or whatever it is, just because that's what is pushed on us now. Like, this is what works currently. Like, this is what the kids are doing. That makes sense. Like, I'm sure that stuff does work, but in 10 years, I don't want to look back and see a bunch of TikToks. I want to see like cool shit that we made, you know. That's the bottom line for me.
Yeah, totally, man. Like, trying to build a legacy. I have a ton of appreciation for that. And I think a lot of the bands that we both love and ones you're inspired by, they've done that. And they've done that through different eras too. Like, I do like, and I'm not trying to kiss your ass. This actually is my favorite Gatecreeper album. I have all of them, starting with Sonoran at least. I don't have the earlier stuff, but I feel like every one you guys are like evolving. And, you know, I know the Black Curtain is definitely like a different type of song, but that's the one I come back to like over and over again. If I just want to hear one Gatecreeper song, for some reason, that one just like hits home for me. In the video, which I'd be curious to learn a little bit more, I thought was like a perfect pairing. It was like awesome.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. You know, every artist says our newest record is the best one, but I think that's the case. And yeah, we have we have evolved a little bit. I remember early on, I remember I did like, it probably was one of the first ever interviews I ever did for Gatecreeper. And I was just, we're never going to change. This is always what it's going to be like, but
Yeah.
we haven't changed that much. It's just, I never thought that I would be on the other side of it where as a fan and when you're younger and it's like, oh, why does this band that I love, why are they doing something different? Like whatever it may be, there's like the misconceptions like, oh, they sold out. Someone paid them money to change their sound. Like like any metal band is, especially an underground band, nobody's legit selling out because there's no money. Nobody's paying you like Prosthetic Records is not paying you a bunch of money to change your sound, like you're doing that because you want to.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the evolution that we've had so far is like extreme where we knew that the record, it was a little bit different for us, and especially some of the songs like Black Curtain, but I never thought at any point it was like too much where people that liked our band were gonna like turn their back. I've looked at it like the people who already like our band are going to like the record, as long as they're slightly open-minded, because again, it's not that different, but also it's opening up the door to a whole new range of people so I'm not trying to like, we're not trying to exclude anybody or isolate any fans that we already have, but just trying to like widen the scope of it, and also just making stuff that we like. That's anything that's changed in the band stylistically is 100% because we wanted to, and that's the stuff that we like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in prep for this, I was watching interviews that are even like 4 or 5 years old, and even then you were like, when it comes to music I like or Gatecreeper, I want to make songs that are catchy, that get stuck in your head. And I feel like you're just getting better at that personally. So it's like the mission statement is still the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, really, really like it. Go ahead.
Appreciate it. Yeah, no, you're right. Like, we made we set out to make like, the next step, the bigger stage Gatecreeper record. And I think that's what we did. And we were talking about pop music earlier, 90s music. And I was talking about, there's just certain things that your brain likes. And, we have always written songs in a more kind of a rock song structure, like verse, chorus and stuff, but, just really like doubling down on that. And like you said, the Black Curtain, you want to keep listening to it. That's because it's a pop song, like it's written in that format where that's what our brains want to hear. You want to hear a hook. You could be listening to Deicide, Once Upon the Cross, and there's hooks all over, Hammer Smash Face or any of the old classic death metal, there are hooks. There doesn't have to be melodic singing to be hooks. And that's kind of the mindset, like whether it's a catchy vocal rhythm or a guitar lead or whatever it is, like just because it's death metal or extreme music does not mean that you can't make it memorable at some point.
Definitely. One thing that like I kind of see as a parallel, and tell me if you're on this ride too, is catchy songs. I also feel like there's catchy imagery or iconic imagery. So like to me, that's why I'm always drawn to traditional tattooing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because you have these repeated motifs. They're like, formulas of sorts, but like the power of a single image. And like, that's why tattoo art has always been, for me, one of my biggest inspirations and what got me excited about art when I was a kid. First of all, it's rebellious, but also it's a catchy image. It sticks in your head. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you kind of see that way with like imagery as well?
100%. I mean, I'm a huge fan of like traditional tattooing as well, because I love that it's like, here's what it is. There are these few, it's like a finite amount of imagery. If you wanted to be like legit traditional, there's like a certain way that you do it, but there's wiggle room where there's a bunch of different interpretations of this thing. And I think that music is the same way, where, death metal could be like, there are these certain things that it needs to have to be death metal, but how many thousands, millions of death metal bands are there that, sound completely different, but they're still death metal. And I've talked about that before. And like with songwriting and Gatecreeper stuff of like, it's fun to have, it's almost like a recipe where it's like, here's the ingredients that we have to work with, and how many ways can we like cook this up that it's different, different influences. Like, all right, this one's got a little bit of obituary. This has got like a Morbid Angel riff in it, plus this other thing. And that's how we look at it. Like, we're just making, there's very specific references. Like on our new record, there's like very specific, Paradise Lost, Catatonia, like even some non-metal stuff like Sisters of Mercy. But like, I'm a very referential person where I wear my influences on my sleeves,
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And like, I think there's an aspect of things can be really, really good, but they don't have to be the most inventive thing ever, especially as culture evolves, right? Like it's hard to create something completely novel in a vacuum. And a lot of times when you see something like that, might not be the thing you like in this day and age, like there's just disparity there.
And I think one of the pitfalls of being in a band is like, you run into that, you want to call it like a catch-22 or something, where it's like, you make a new record. If it sounds exactly like you have before, people are like, oh, this is boring. They already made this record. You do something new, they're like, oh, why did they change? We wanted a number 2 we wanted Deserted Volume 2. So you can't win. So you just have to like not even think about that, of like, if you get too caught up of like, what are people going to think? Or, because we put so much like thought and like so much intention into things, into say the music, and to us, we're working on it. We're like, oh, this is a lot very different, because we know that it's different for us because we're trying different things. But most times we send, that goes out into the world and people are just like, new Gatecreeper, rock on. There's like any of the nuance is completely dismissed. So, or people, if they already didn't like Gatecreeper, they'd be like, new Gatecreeper sucks, So yeah. I can't say that I'm a person that I don't read reviews or whatever, not as much anymore, just because I don't know, it doesn't really matter to me. And but it is, I'd be lying if I said I don't want to see what people's reactions are, and it is very validating, even for the new record, of seeing like a review or talking to you or someone where like they'll pick up on a reference that we put in there, like, oh, hey, this part, like I kind of getting like a certain vibe from this, and I'm like, exactly, that's intentional. So I'm glad that those things pick up, and that's really what I'm looking for. If there's any sort of like feedback or criticism from whether it's like journalists or just people, like any of the bad stuff, whatever, I'm able to kind of just brush it off. But I do appreciate, and I do like, it is super validating to see when people do pick up on the references and the little details that you put in there, because that means that like people are actually paying attention,
Yeah, totally. I guess you tell me if you'd agree. Like, if somebody gave you a bad review, but you could tell they like truly listened to it a lot and like were very detailed about it, it would probably burn more. But like, that would be more legitimate than someone just who's always hated Gatecreeper, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's definitely a lot of like, in music in general, or even in our more specific subgenre worlds, is like people are quick to dismiss things or find some way to discredit, it's like, oh, Gatecreeper has, been successful. It's because of, they have, who knows? There's been many things that have been said of just like, whether it's like, we're hardcore kids making death metal or whatever it is, like, oh, this just boring new wave of old school death metal. But I think that a lot of people are very quick to just have some sort of dismissal or find a way to discredit you and not be like, oh, well, Gatecreeper, I don't really necessarily like it, but they're doing their own thing. It's like, oh, well, they're, they sound exactly like Entombed, which I don't know, can never escape that. Like if someone heard the Black Curtain or saw the video, there's probably comments on that. This sounds exactly like Entombed. It doesn't. But
it sounds more like Old in Flames to me.
Yeah, well, like, there's certain things that we'll never be able to escape, and that's fine. People made up their minds.
Yeah, no, I feel you, man. And I think if anything, friends of mine, people in the YouTube community, if they have anything against your music, that's fine. But I imagine most are like, those guys work hard. That's something that can't really be taken. Dude, how many shows do you average on a year? I mean, it's unreal how often you guys are on tour.
We definitely, I think 2 years ago, 2022, we definitely did over 100 shows in the year.
That's crazy.
Probably close to 150, but that's like a lot, but from the outside perspective, it's like, oh, you guys are touring all the time. But for me, I'm like, it's only a third of the year, but it is a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about is the Xerox machine behind you and kind of like how that comes into play. So how long have you had that thing? And, I guess talk through your process. Cause like, dude, I haven't Xerox something in a long time.
All right. So, well, first, I'm going to shout out my friend Dean. He has done a lot of stuff for Gatecreeper. He just had sent something to me the other day, but he is a friend that I made, early on in the band that originally I commissioned to make a Gatecreeper. Actually, I have it right here. We made this demo style J card this is like our first EP plus maybe another split song that we made for. That's awesome. We still do the tour tapes, but this was one of the first ones. And I knew, I since the beginning, I knew what Gatecreeper should look like, and that's exactly like death metal demo band zine style, like when it comes to like full lengths, like Dan Seagrave type, like just the classics, like the benchmark death metal sort of stuff. So I knew what I wanted to look like, but I didn't know how to do it myself just yet. So, I started to find people, and I found my friend Dean. He was doing Xerox stuff, and I didn't even really clock it at first, like how it was made, but I was like, that looks like what I want it to look like, so I commissioned him to do it. And in the process, we became friends. And also he was super open with me of like, hey, this is how I do it. Like, here's the process. And then, even down to like, I was already interested in doing stuff myself. And he was just like, wrote me a recipe. It was like, do this in Photoshop, print it out, go to your local, Staples. So I used to go to a Staples store and with a folder of things that I needed to Xerox them there, and then take them home and scan it. But he literally like mapped it out for me of like how to get started, of like, this is, he understood what I was looking for and what I wanted. And he was like, this is how you do it. And I just kind of took off from there. So shout out to Dean. He's awesome. And he put me on, and ever since then, I've just like, I've learned I've just figured it out, and I've developed my process, over the years, but it is very heavily, it's more about the tool, like I do think that I can drum up some cool imagery, but, the whole style is contingent upon like the actual tool that you're using, and that's the Xerox machine. And I was trying to do different things of that sort of look just digitally, like in the box.
Yeah.
And like, I'm sure, there's plenty of ways, and I've learned to certain things that I can keep in the box a little bit and still look good. But, in my opinion, you can't fake the funk, like,
yeah,
you can get there close with anything digital, but if there's the digital version and the analog version, you'll never fully be able to replicate it, especially with visual stuff. I don't know about audio, recording gear or whatever it is now, because there's also that argument there, analog, digital. But for art stuff, and specifically like this, it needs to touch paper in order for it to look right, and there's that like spontaneity or like randomness of a process like the Xerox machine, where it's like, I want things to look irregular, even text. Like, even if it's an insert or something and it's just text layout and like Helvetica font or whatever, anything for Gatecreeper, it touches paper first before it goes into there. And because I don't want it to have just a standard font. Even if it is just a standard font, if you edit it or do whatever treatments to it and make it so each letter is kind of irregular, it makes a huge difference. So that's what I use the Xerox machine for. So I used to go and print out things at Staples, and one day I showed up and they had changed the machines, and they changed it to like newer ones, like newer digital ones that were color, and they didn't have, these black and white ones are what I need. And there's specific settings on them that like how you do what you got to do on there, like brightness, contrast, sharpness, some sort of variation on the different models of these settings that are important. So I had like I think I forgot what I was working on, but like I showed up with my folder of things I needed to Xerox, and I was like, oh no, like what am I going to do now? But I panicked for a second, but as soon as I got home, I just went on Craigslist and I found the exact model of Xerox machine that I was using at that Staples. And this guy was selling, he like had a business of buying a bunch of, like wholesale or liquidation office appliances and stuff. And I think he goes down to Mexico and sells them. But I don't know, he had this, and so the same day I went and picked up the Xerox machine, and I've just had one at my house ever since. This is actually the second one that I've had, because one, the original one that I bought on Craigslist, I broke when I was moving.
Oh, really?
It's a big piece of machinery, and this one that I have is like a work desk, so it's designed to be able to print a lot of copies in a short amount of time. There's a number, so I don't know but they're usually numbered by like how many pages they can print per minute. But I don't need that. Like there's a huge like shelf underneath, multiple drawers that you put a bunch of paper in, and I don't need that. So I definitely don't need a huge work desk. And this specific one is kind of old, and if I tried to print out like 100 copies of something, it would jam on the 9th one. So I've been using this one for a while. There's differences in the one that I had before, and you kind of have to figure it out, because the whole process with the Xerox is kind of random. I'm always just like trying different things out, and you're doing copy to copy. So like copying it once, taking that copy, changing the settings, copying it again. So something might just run through there once and then I scan it in, or something I might change on there 20 times and then scan it back in.
Nice. And you got a scanner there at home too?
Yeah, I just have like I don't know, just like a super cheap Brother.
I guess for doing black and white, it doesn't really matter. I got this like kind of expensive one for trying to get paintings, and I have to do a bunch of edits and stuff. Even then, though, I have to do like color correction. It like goes too red. Like that's usually where it defaults.
Do you ever? I know when I've gotten like big paintings and stuff in the past, which we'll get to. I have some of the originals. I'll show you. But
oh hell yeah!
Some artists that are working in like a big analog format like that would prefer to have it photographed than scanned. Do you have a preference?
I don't mind the scanned, because I feel like I can actually enhance some stuff. Like sometimes when I'm doing the painting, it has a slight dullness to it because it's not oil. I know Brian Montori is very adamant about taking pictures over scanners, which is funny. I find different preferences from other people, but for me, scanner's fine, as long as I can dial back the red a little bit.
Yeah, there's definitely like our Brad Moore art, the Deserted art. It definitely, like the scan of it, the colors were like completely different almost.
Yeah.
Like I definitely had to like do some desaturation and some like color correction on it.
It was more vibrant, probably, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah. It was like
Slime Lord is definitely more vibrant with the scan. I mean, Brad showed it on the show.
Yeah,
it's definitely more earth toned in the natural. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, that's exactly it. Like it was definitely more just like super saturated. Like the colors were way more kind of bright and almost neonish, because there's like pinks and purples and stuff. But my scanner, because most of the time when I'm scanning it back in, it's probably going to be like, desaturated anyways, or it's going to be maybe even like thresholded or, just turned to pure black and white anyway. So I will scan them in, like just the black and white copies. I'll scan them in color, because because there is those settings where it's just like a pure black and white, like, like the document scanning, which does look cool, but you don't get that like paper grain on there, which I think is important. So if I'm scanning it in color, it has like, sometimes I'll keep it because it has kind of like a slight bluish hint to it, or like kind of like a reddish color to it. So it's not actually pure black and white. And I like that. Or, there's some good grain on it, and you can, in post, I can kind of bring out those grains.
Off the top of your head, and if you don't have an answer, that's fine. Do you have like a favorite classic vintage cassette art? Like kind of in that style you're talking about, like the demo style? Is there a particular one? I could maybe pull it up and post.
Let me grab one.
Cool.
Abhorrence, a good one.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty classic, handmade.
I always love the photos like that.
Like just super degraded. Like the people's faces are just a blur. This one's a comp.
Very nice. So even then, you got the tattoo motif of that type of Jesus, which, it's originally religious imagery, but it's been used a ton.
And this one is super simple, but like I've always loved this one. Like, looks like we got some Helvetica. That's also my font of choice. Super simple, like cut and paste style, but like, like having the kind of cutout box around the text.
Mm-hmm.
Very classic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's kind of a shame Ken's death metal crypt, kind of reaching an end, because he had all that stuff like archived. I haven't looked to see if he's actually shut it down completely, but there was just so many like obscure
Is he shutting
things.
it down, like he's like deleting the channel, or is he just not doing any new uploads?
Somebody can fact check me. Last time I heard, he was basically cutting it out completely because he didn't want to get messaged about it. He just wanted to move on, which I get, but like he's
been doing that forever, because I've been following, his YouTube channel. There's definitely a point in my death metal journey that I was just like a demo fiend, So I'm like, and this was before Ken was just a mysterious person. Like you just saw Ken's death metal crypt on YouTube, but like this was before it wasn't until the past couple of years that I saw what he looked like, and he kind of had like an online persona. But for a long time, it was just a random. People knew about it. Everybody was like, "Oh yeah, Ken's death metal crypt." It's like synonymous with like, "Oh yeah, if you know what the Metallum is, what Ken's death metal crypt is." But yeah, I thought he kind of like popped out and was kind of being like I remember there, the band Full Before, like, "Oh, you did an interview with
Vinny." Yeah.
Yeah. How I found the band Full Before, and we ended up taking them on tour, was because of Ken's death metal crypt, because at the time he was doing those kind of like live streams, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they were on there, and I was like, "Oh, this band's from Fargo." And we made friends with them, and we ended up taking them on tour based off of that. But it was all because of Ken's death metal crypt.
That's awesome, dude. He's a great dude, man. He's got that like uncle energy. I love it, man.
Yeah, I would love to be able to like go and look through all of his shit.
Go into the crypt, yeah. I've had some friends that have been there, and like he like made some burgers for him and stuff. Like just
what state do you live in?
Chicago.
I don't want to. I'm not trying to dox him right now.
No, he's open about it. He's outside of Chicago. I don't know him personally, by the way. Just message with him, but he's very open about that.
I'm a fan. I've never talked to him, but I'm a fan.
Oh yeah, dude. Do you watch a lot of like metal YouTube or some?
There was a period earlier this year that I watched a lot of J-Dog, and I was watching it every morning, and I feel like it affected my mental health, and I had to stop. It was novel. It was novel, but the novelty wore off pretty quick. But I got no issue with that. I actually tried to. I'm not sure. I think it was successful, but there was a time he was like trying to get a hold of Sacred Reich, the Arizona band. And he was like, "Oh, they're not replying to my email." So I was like, I emailed him. I was like, "Yo, J Dog, I got you. I'll set you up. But we know Sacred Reich, so I'll set you up." I unintentionally got myself in the middle of like a thing where it's like, "Hey, they haven't responded to me," and I'm like, I don't know how it is, but he did do the interview with them, so I guess it worked out.
No, man, just no comment on my end.
But as far as like metal YouTube, I'm not really a podcast guy in general, like listening to podcasts aside from if like someone that I know is on there that's like I want to know more about, like that's I watched your Hayden one or your Josh one. It's like, oh, this is cool, because I definitely have YouTube pulled up every day, and if something pops up on my recommended, but I don't know. I wish that on YouTube it was easier for me to find like old, like for instance, I've been collecting a bunch of like old like music VHSs. Like a lot of them are like compilations. Every label would come out with like there's like the Death Is Just the Beginning. There's like the Metal Blade ones. There's the Earache ones, and like Hard and Heavy Video Magazine. Have you ever seen those?
No.
There's like different issues. It's a video magazine, but they have crazy like bumpers of different art, like animations and stuff mixed in with like the music videos. It's really cool. But I wish that stuff was easier to find, because if I'm trying to look for like say a band, a death metal band or whatever, there might be some sort of documentary type deep dive into it or some sort of YouTube content related to it, but just the way that it's put together, it's just never what I want. Like a voiceover of just like maybe some stock photos and kind of more like a DIY little like documentary or like a feature on a band, and I'll watch them, but usually I'm like, this is not what I want. This is not what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's just more like a fan's take on it instead of something that has like this unique older charm. I get you.
Yeah. But I don't know. What am I missing out on? Like, what's your favorite metal YouTubers?
I mean, a lot of them are friends of mine, so I like watching reviewers, collection updates. I'll shout out a couple. Heavy Metallurgy, Marty and Alan are really good dudes. They are into all types of metal. They do live streams on Fridays. Melanie loves death metal. Really cool person. Explosive Action, Thralls of Metal, Gas Mask and Hand Grenades. I mean, there's a ton, but they're kind of friends too. One person that I go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to shout out, very big YouTuber, but he reps underground metal and he wears Gatecreeper shirts all the time. But Papa Meat from Meat Canyon, dude, he's always wearing metal shirts. He has like 5 Gatecreeper shirts and like some Sanguisugabog shirts. I'm like, hell yeah, man. Because like he gets a ton of views, so more power to him, man.
Yeah,
he's a cool
awesome.
dude too.
I've never met him, but I've talked to him before, and it's like a completely different world, and I came to find out that he's like a very popular YouTuber, and he actually was asking us if we at one point to make like an original song for something he had been working on, and I was like, the timing of it was just like really bad, because if it would have been earlier, like, if we had something in the tank and we like got it done while we were making our record, we could have totally done it. But I think that when he hit me up to do it, we had just finished, we had been working on a record for 2 years and it was finally done. And I was like, not going back in the studio anytime soon. So maybe one day we will, but yeah, he's cool. He rocks our shit all the time. And when we were playing some shows with Suffocation in Asia, and Terrence is like, I guess he's like a big cartoon guy. He like loves like Rick and Morty and shit. But he was like literally the first second that I met him, he was like, yo, Meat Canyon, how did you get him to wear your shirts? That's so cool. And I was like, I don't know. I had nothing to do with it. He just likes our band. He was like, no way. That is so cool. And I like took a picture of me and Terrence and sent it to Papa Meat. I was like, yo, Terrence from Suffocation loves you. It's funny.
Yeah, man. He's commissioned artists in the scene too. I mean, he's done work with
I
Daniel
think
Shaw, Chad,
all that.
Keith, and
I
Josh,
saw someone
and
just
then
very
James.
recently. Did Josh do one very recently?
Yeah.
Someone I saw and I was
I
like,
haven't. Yo, no, I saw. Pop Me did release it, but yeah, the image is on the episode with Josh. But yeah, I mean, he's
I
worked with a lot of illustrators in the scene.
I remember the Saw Blade one. We worked with Saw Blade before.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, basically everyone who's been on the show has done something with Gatecreeper at some point, man. But you get them early on. You know, a lot of times people kind of follow suit afterwards, which I think is commendable. You know. Um,
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the benefits of actually being interested in this and actually having the like hunger to find new, I've always been that way. I'm always looking for new music.
yeah.
And now for artist stuff, like I'm always looking for new people to work with, like and at this point now that I'm doing it as a job and as a career, I've been more organized about it. And, I have a huge list of artists that we've worked with or artists that I want to work with. And like, I wouldn't share that list with anybody because it's like, years and years of hard work. But the Rolodex is crazy. It's like, ideally, I would like to have it set up where I'm like any type of style that I could ever want to be like, this is the guy for it. And there's already things like that, even in specific death metal art. Obviously, there's different styles. And probably the people that have been on your show that I haven't worked with yet is probably because they do like some very big, like big scale paintings or something. And, we only put out a record every couple years. I only need that sort of stuff once in a blue moon. But like for shirt designs and flyers, like I need that, I need that all day.
Do you have a copy of like every shirt you guys have made? Like, do you have like a collection of that, or some of them kind of like lost?
I do. I used to be a lot better about it, and I've tried to keep up with it, and I've tried to keep one of every shirt, and I do have that. Like, if you watch the Santa Cruz video I did, like we
I
went to
saw that. Yeah.
yeah, a very a vulnerable moment of me and my, like I felt like I was on Hoarders. But I've tried to keep one of everyone. It used to be a lot easier when, like, for the first half of the band or up until a couple years ago when I used to get them printed here locally. So I
Mhm.
would have them on hand and I would be the one, usually selling the merch too, but I could have them at my house getting ready for tour and I could take one of each and make sure I had it. But now it's like we have merch stores online or like in different countries or whatever it is where they're doing all the fulfillment. So I have to specifically request like, hey, make sure that you send me one of each of these, which it's just another thing that I have to keep track of. But we I don't know if you saw pictures of it, but for our 10-year anniversary show, that was our record release show, 10-year anniversary, we had a display made of a lot of our shirts. Over 100 of the shirts was
Oh, yeah, I didn't
put
see
on
that.
display. I'll send you a picture of it. It was really cool. So I was very glad that I had kept all of them at that point and kind of lit the fire under my ass to like keep it going and make sure that I stay on the ball with that. But I have been pretty good about keeping a lot of stuff. So I just went through a bin that I have here just so I have some stuff to show you. So
Yeah, go ahead.
I definitely try to keep the stuff on hand.
Yeah.
Let me see. Let's see. For Gatecreeper stuff, I have a bunch of like original art. So usually when I'm commissioning, especially like an album cover, I'll request if I could also purchase personally the originals. So as you know, like, if someone commissions you for an album, a shirt design or album art or whatever, they're getting the rights to use your art, but if you painted, you're probably going to keep the original. So I usually try to work out a deal where I can own the original as well. So I have the originals for multiple of them. So like this is the original drawing for our first EP.
Very cool.
Just like pen on paper. It looks like straight up ballpoint pen. And there's like back, That was actually done later. Originally, I hit up this dude to do the EP. We weren't even a real band yet, so he did the cover. And then later on, when it was coming out on vinyl, I had to, I got him to make this for the back, and laid out the
songs
text
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the first one, and then I have a bunch of originals. I don't have the Dark Superstition one. I would really like to. Lena, the artist, said that she wanted to hold on to it and like do some shows and stuff with it, or some put it on display or whatever it is for a while. But hopefully I'll have that. But I do have took these off the wall for now, but this is the Brad Moore original.
Hell yeah.
I got the expensive museum glass on there. It's really cool up close. You can like see the actual texture on the paints and different. I don't know. It's really cool to look at up close.
Is that on canvas or illustration board? Like, is there a tooth on it?
I can't really. Yeah, there kind of is actually. Yeah, there's definitely a little texture on it. I'm not sure if that's just the paint, but
that's neat though, man. I really want to have a Brad Moore original. I collect original as well, so I know the hunger for it.
You had an episode with Brad, right?
I've had a couple, yeah.
I have a funny Brad story. So I hit him up to do that art, and I can't remember like the medium that it might have been Facebook Messenger. So we were like communicating via Facebook Messenger and then like a text at some point. And he's like an old school guy, so he was making sketches. And even though I was texting him and he could have easily just sent me a picture, he would mail me like a copy of a sketch in the mail.
Oh, wow.
And then text me like, hey, let me know when you get it. And I'm just like, you can just send me a picture, but it's cool. So I have like a copy of, I think maybe 2 different drafts. So he sent me one that was like an original idea. I hadn't seen anything yet, and it came in the mail, and I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And then there was a second phase of another sketch, and he had sent it to me the same way. And then I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like, let's start inking it. And he was like, all right, cool. Can you actually send me that one back? Like, I forgot I didn't make a copy of it. So he like sent me the actual sketch that he was working on. So I just sent it back to him. But it was awesome. Like I got a kick out of it. I thought it was great. Like we definitely had to dial it in a little bit more as we were getting down towards the finish line of like, painting and all that. So we weren't able to do the snail mail communication, but I could probably find that too, but I have that. And then I have the Tom Toy Logical Comics Unexpected Reality original painting. Yeah, this one's really sick. This one, I'm not sure what you should have him on the show. He does a lot of cool stuff.
That's what Josh mentioned. I need to reach out to him. I like his work a lot.
Oh yeah, him and Josh go back. I think they used
friends.
to screen print together or something. Yeah. And then in addition to that, I also got him to give me the sketch.
Oh wow.
So this is the actual sketch as well.
Yeah, man. I'm curious how he transferred it onto the canvas then. Like what method?
I don't know. He might have just used the sketch and then freehanded it on another canvas.
Or graphite rub or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
I use a light box personally because I usually work with thin enough paper that I can bleed through.
Yeah,
kind of like
that makes more
tattoo
sense.
style.
We got to have him on the show. I'll tell you in person. And then the last, I have 2 more. This one's really small, but this ended up being used for our split with Exhumed, which was kind of like we were going on tour with them, and we were both on Relapse at the time. And so our side was like we had done a song, we did one of those Adult Swim songs, and we had done a split, or we done a song for Decibel, one of the Decibel Flexies. So our side of that is like 2 extra songs basically from Deserted, and then Exhumed is a couple extra songs from whatever album they had at the same time. But this was forget his actual name, but Nightmare Imagery.
Yep. Joe.
Yeah, so he did this, which is really cool. And then
Dang, that is tiny.
yeah, and then I have, this is the second one, but this is the most recent Mark Rudolph Decibel portrait, or what do you want to call this? A caricature, cartoon?
Yeah. I thought he did those digitally. That's really cool.
No, yeah, because I got the first one from him. So this is we've been able to have the cartoon in Decibel twice now. The first one, you know, I hit him up. I was like, yo, this is awesome. Like, is there any way I could get the original? And he sent it to me. And then when he did this one, it was like, you know, we had already gone through it before. So I was like, yo, let me get that original. But Mark's really cool. He actually just put out a book, and he just messaged me yesterday that he's got a copy of the book sent to me. So it's like a collection of all of his cartoons and stuff. And I think that I'm quoted on the back of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because
yeah,
I
Mark's really talented, man. I love what he does.
Yeah, I mean, I've been reading Decibel forever, and his cartoons are like synonymous with Decibel, you know.
For sure.
That's
awesome.
That's the originals that I have as far as Gatecreeper stuff. I haven't posted it yet, but I probably will next week. But you have the image of some of the newer like Gatecreeper flyers.
Yeah. You want me to pull it up? I mean,
yeah, there was on the deck. There was like three. There was like a section of three of them. I think it might have been the first ones, but it was three that I just did. Yeah. So I just did these. These are three that I did myself for the flyer project, just because they're like, you know, kind of earlier shows in the tour. And if I'm commissioning it, I don't want to give someone too like tight of a deadline. So I'm like, I'm going to do the ones that need to be done first, you know? So this is kind of like an example of the process, like my advanced process, I guess, while still using the Xerox machine. But, you know, rather than just keeping it black and white, I have developing different methods to it's almost like screen print methods, but it's using the Xerox machine, and having each paper copy that I'm printing is a different layer, I guess. And then I also now, on a lot of my design stuff, will have a special concoction of different effects and layers, adjustment layers, textures that I will throw on top. That even though it already touched paper and it's been scanned back in, a lot of the process, it's gonna like, you know, it's gonna remove that paper texture that I want, especially if I'm coloring it. So I definitely do stuff now in post, or like after things had been scanned in, to really like bring back out the paper texture. So I had a lot of fun doing these ones, and like, you know, little nerdy kind of like design or art details of like having the little like drop shadows, or for me, I try to make it look like it's misregistered for a screen printer, you know? So like, it's not a like a regular stroke around it. I don't really like how a stroke looks normally, but if it looks like, you know, there's supposed to be a white underbase, but it like got tweaked a little bit, that's what I'm going for. And I definitely did that on these. But I wanted to show you, I might as well give up some secrets on here.
Whatever you're comfortable with. This stuff's cool, though, man. I never think of this stuff.
Yeah, so here's an example of that flyer, that blue one. So I just made that one. So this is this is what I'm scanning in, is each layer I've Xeroxed separately, and that's going to be a different color. And this is like the halftone that I put on top, kind of like a highlight, I guess. But you know, this is all the red. It's going to be all the red. That's all the black, and that's all the white. And since it's, you know, essentially what would be a 3-color print, or like a 4-color total thing on a background, I kind of have been laying things on top of each other and then messing around with that. So it's been pretty fun. And I think it's, you know, uh, like you said, it might not look like I'm looking at the flyer right now. It's in the middle, and when I first, it looks like it could be a fucking Valentine, you know, like. But I've been really into like primary colors and just bold colors, almost like pop art sort of stuff, in the context of this, which that applies to American traditional tattooing and stuff that we were talking about. Like there's a select colors. If you use too many colors, it's not traditional.
I mean, I love it. Like when I saw the flyer you posted for the little dragon, hatchling, I was like, fuck yeah, man. Like it's just cool. Like seeing things kind of evolve and like trying new things. And like, I imagine it had a good reception. Like you've opened up that avenue that it's still within the kind of wheelhouse of Gatecreeper, but like every time you guys do like a new post release or fly release, I feel like you're just kind of pushing that boundary out a little bit farther. So I'm always intrigued with whatever you post, man.
I appreciate it. And it's cool because it's almost like we've created like a self-sustaining universe of like Gatecreeper visual stuff, because the more and more different artists put their own spin on it, it kind of has created like, there's like, we don't have an emblem. We don't have an Eddie, we don't have a singular, we don't have an emblem logo or anything, but there's like reoccurring themes of different things. Like I really like dragon stuff, or, there's always someone with a weapon or like some sort of warrior or something. And I don't even need to say that to people anymore. They already see what has already been done and they're like, all right, I get it. So it's like, now it just feeds off of each other. And now there's like a whole Gatecreeper art universe that like I can bring whoever I want into it and be like, yo, here's like 50 flyers before, like, you know what to do, like if they want to do something completely different than what we've usually been doing, cool, but I think a lot of them understand the mission and they're like, as soon as it's on their plate to do a Gatecreeper flyer, they know exactly what they want to do.
That's awesome. These two, so these all are collaborations, or other artists have a hand in it as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the one on the left is a friend named Anthony Eslick. He's actually from Arizona, but he moved away. And like we kind of knew each other previously, but we recently reconnected because I came across his art, which I didn't even know at the time when I met him here that he even did stuff like that. And he is doing like really cool it's like digital airbrush sort of things. So he's definitely working digital. So yeah, we worked together on that flyer for sure. The one in the middle is Tom Toy, Illogical Comics. And that's a drawing that he had done for me like back, might have even been before.
He said 2019 yesterday when I was just looking at his post.
Yeah. I saw he posted that original. Yeah, so he had that for a while because he's done stuff for us before, whether it's the album cover, but he's one of those artists that he has a couple different styles where it's like super colorful, like this crazy paintings, but then also like a really graphic, kind of 2-color, more like metal style. So that one, it was originally a black and white drawing, but he ended up making it, kind of a middle ground between his two styles. It's really cool. And then the one on the right is Cirrus, a dude from Prague. Yeah. We've met him, like he's come to our shows in Czech, I've seen him. We've seen him in several countries actually, because we definitely saw him at one of the Czech festivals and then a show in Prague. But yeah, he's crazy, like, and he's also super fast. Like he I feel like he's posting a new flyer every day for a different band, and it's like not
the same thing.
And it's illustrative. Like, I don't know his full process, but like he is not just like slapping some clip art on something. Like he's actually illustrating these, and he's awesome. And he's done stuff for us before, and he's definitely going to do some stuff in the future.
I'd be curious to see some of his raw drawings, just from a process perspective. Like I like what he does as his final look, no doubt. Just me being the nerd, I just want to see like just the paper just to
Yeah, me
see.
too. Like I'm not sure if he's doing it like, he's illustrating it like pointillism style, or if it's like more bold and then he's making it look grained, that sort of like, I don't know what you'd call that, like stippling effect. I don't know if that's as a Xerox effect or if he's actually doing that with the illustration.
My guess is fully drawing something out, and then just he's has that graphic design feel and touch as well. Like, and that's like the, you know how it is. Like, there's a lot of visual artists that are really good painters or good illustrators, but they're not as much like designers. And then there's
Yeah.
designers who are good illustrators as well. Frankly, I
Hmm.
like, for me, like Mark Riddick, he's a good friend of mine, but he's also like just as good as he is as an illustrator. He's also a very good designer, and a lot of people don't know that. But like
Yeah.
being able to flesh something out and finish it like digitally and get it ready for production, that's like a skill set I personally want to work more on, and it's I think understated. Like I can draw all day, but like I feel like that's a personal weakness of mine, is like just seeing it all the way through with the digital. But this isn't about me,
Yeah.
but just like I
No,
admire it with other people.
no, I appreciate that. And to that point, I don't think that you necessarily need to. I think it's good that to recognize, the things that you're good at and you're not good at. Because for
Yeah.
me, like, I'm not an illustrator. I can draw, I guess, and I do implement drawings into my designs. Usually it's like, the extent of it is like doing blood drips on everything or maybe some text. But I my personal design stuff is more collage style, and like
Yeah.
it's very it I have to have good like reference, and I have to have like, you know I have to I use stuff that I just find, like, and that's kind of like a sketchy territory sometimes. Like I get stressed out if I have to do like an album cover or something, because I'm like, if it's a flyer or something, like you can get away with just like, taking something from a movie poster or whatever it may be. But the stakes are a little bit higher if you're like trying to, if a band is trying to be like, this is our original art, like you can't really, there's less wiggle room. As at
Yeah.
least my opinion on it is like, you know sure that there's things that are public domain, but there's also things that are just like, you know public domain by default. And I'll explain that. Like, say zines, death metal zines, something that's like a huge influence on mine, and you go through Slayer Mag or any of the other zines, you will start to recognize that the different zines would take stuff from the other zines. Like you'll see a border, like the borders on the zines are always cool. You know what I'm talking about?
Totally.
And you'll see it in multiple different of the magazines, so there was like, it's almost like sampling. I really love like Memphis rap. So, and like the Memphis tape trading stuff, and like there's stuff in there, whether it's like, a reference to sampling. When you're doing graphic design, for me, I feel like I'm sampling, like I'm taking little pieces of different things and I'm reimagining it. Um, and same way with like how they would musically, like in a lot of rap is this way, where if once you get like super deep into it and familiar with a lot of different, artists or releases, I would start to notice like, oh, I didn't know that the hook from this song was a sample of like one line of a verse of this other song. And then you start hearing it and like start to pick up on these Easter eggs and be like, oh, everybody was just borrowing from each other. And it's not that they were stealing from each other. It was just like there was these kind of like public domain, whether music, samples or visual things that I think is ingrained into this sort of stuff, and that people don't realize. Same with like bootleg stuff.
Yeah.
Bootlegs have been around since I since counterculture has been around. Um, and it's a big part of metal. It's a big part of punk. You go into any metal festival, and there's like a whole mall of bootleg stuff. Even in the U.S., if you go to Europe or other countries, it's even crazier. They're selling bootlegs of your shirts right out in front of your show. But that's part of our culture. Like that is a big part of it. So I think that bootleg stuff sometimes looks cooler, so it's like that's a reference for me of like finding bootleg stuff. And like there's this specific type of bootleg tapes. There were bootleg tapes, and they have a specific format for all of them, and I straight up
They
ripped
got
that
those
off
like
for,
crazy color borders.
yeah,
I know what you're talking about. I've seen those.
like I ripped it off completely for this.
Yeah, yep. I was thinking exactly that.
That's the
That's
format.
wicked, man.
But that's the type of stuff where it's like, there, this is cool, and it was an obvious format at the time. So I was like, if I see a border and multiple zines, I'm like, I'm gonna take that board. I'm gonna use it now. That I think that's a big part of it, of graphic design. And I think going back to how we led into this is that I'm not an illustrator, but I would say that I'm more of a designer. So I'm like the
Yeah.
opposite of you. But how my whole like, commissioning thing works so well is that, it doesn't matter if I'm working with you on a flyer and you're doing the art, and then I help with the layout, that's putting our skill sets together. And that's what I do very often. Like I just got I've started to get art back for the flyers that I commissioned. Sometimes it's fully fleshed out, like it's a final image, post it. Sometimes it's just the art, and I need to put the finishing touches on it. I need to put the logos on there or whatever, or somewhere in between there. So I work a lot with artists that are just illustrators, or just, I've evolved my process now of like, if I am getting a shirt design, say for Gatecreeper shirt design, like format is very simple. It's the logo up top with a graphic underneath. So a lot of times I was like, don't even put the logo on there. Like just do the graphic, and I will lay it out myself. Don't even worry about it. So it's, if you see that, hey, I'm not good at design, but I'm good at illustration or whatever else it is, like, you could still get the job done. You don't need to do all of it yourself.
Yeah, it's always a juggling act of anyone figuring out, do you double down on your strengths or do you work on your weaknesses? You know what I mean? Because the pursuit of becoming a better drafts person is never ending. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
there's always room to grow there.
I think that there's two, aside from like being an illustrator or designer, there's also, I don't know how to explain this. There's things that you can be taught, and there's things that you cannot be taught. So
Yeah.
there's things in graphic design. Say if you're working in Photoshop or whatever it is, like there's technical things. There's a skill set that's very technical, and all the right commands, and you can do everything in a technical sense. But then it also requires a creative sense, or have like an artistic mind. And someone might not have both of those. Someone might just be, I know plenty of super creative people, but they barely know how to use a computer. Like, hey, like, let me get you set up, like you would kill it with an iPad. But it really depends on like what your skill set is. And because for me, like I have been trying to learn more technical stuff lately, just because it makes your job easier, and it makes it, like looking at a project that I have, a flyer or whatever, and like, kind of like a problem solution format, or just like, what's my goal here? What do I want this? I'm trying to achieve this certain effect. I want it to look like it's printed out on paper and scanned back in, and it's not. How do I do that? And like solving a little mystery in your project of like, I know that this is possible. I know that there's some sort of combination of effects or things that I can do, actions that I can do to achieve this. But like, I got to figure out how to get there. And that's kind of a fun challenge.
Totally, man. Well, keep an eye on the time.
Yeah, we're good.
So yeah, single on the left here, album cover on the right. I've heard from
Beautiful.
Hayden, on the tank, but like, I could kind of see the opposite too. Like, what was it like from your perspective?
Yeah, no, I watched his interview. It was funny because, to hear the other side of it and being like, oh shit, like he wants me to do what? But yeah, Hayden's awesome. This is like probably the third or fourth time that I'd worked with him. And I'll say up front that this is one of those things where in my career, or my position as being in charge of the artistic side of Gatecreeper, this album art in particular is an example of where I have to really kind of explain why I want to pay someone to do a full album art cover for just a single that's only going to be released digitally. Like this is not the actual album cover. It is not a 7-inch cover. It is not printed. It's not physical media at all. It's strictly digital. So I think most people if you're looking at it in a business sense or just logistical sense, they'd be like, oh, just use this, use a cropped version of the album art, or just put your logo on there, or do whatever. But those are things that I'm willing to do, is like just go overkill and get like full brand new art just for this digital art, because I think it's cool, and it obviously costs money, and it obviously is just another piece of the puzzle when you're like putting out a record. But I was very adamant of like, I don't want to release a song. This was the first song that was released for this album, and the first song that we had released in probably 3 years, and it was before the album was like actually announced. So I was like, I need to have something like crazy, like it needs to like punch you in the face when you see it. And he crushed it. I would like to think that I have learned how to give really good direction, or at least articulate what I want, because you when you work with a lot of different artists, you learn that the most frustrating thing is trying to help someone that doesn't know what they actually want, or at least they're not able to articulate what they want. So I've really refined my process in giving really good direction and really good references, and just being like, here's everything that you need. It's should be just cut and dry. And I think he talked about it in the video, but I think he might have. I think he was like trying to remember what the references I were, but for sure, I wanted a mashup of the Massive Killing Capacity album cover and the In Flames Gesture Race album cover. And then I gave him a bunch of references of a bunch of like Warhammer stuff that I had. There we go. Yeah, I have an insane stash of just digital PDFs of so many of those manuals, like White Dwarf magazine, Dragon magazine is sick. All of those manuals, whether it's like minis or whatever it is, like I have an insane stash of those that I'm always using for references. But yeah, Hayden crushed it. I definitely didn't tell him that I wanted it to be like full bleed art until he was art, because he said, he's like, yeah, I left room for the logo, and I'm like, I don't want to touch your, like, I don't want to just slap a logo on there just because we're supposed to. Like, if your art is sick, it doesn't need our art, especially because if it's digital, because it's a little bit overkill to have this full painted single cover, but also if you're only going to be listening to a digital, it's going to have our name Gatecreeper like right under it, so it's like, why do we need it? We don't need to have our logo on there, so that was my reasoning for that. So he had to go in there and kind of fill those clouds with like skulls and stuff, which I think he already had there, and I was just like, yo, crank it up. But I think that those little details on there are some of the coolest parts.
Well, it's nice negative space, and the fucking colors, man. The way they,
insane.
Complement, it's great. And to your point too, like if you look at pop and hip hop on singles, they're rarely putting their name on there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think maybe it's just like a metal thing that sometimes people just need to get introduced to how other genres work. Especially ones that are successful. Yeah.
No, I think that applies to all aspects of the music industry for sure. Dark Superstition one, Lena Richter did this. She's actually mostly a tattoo artist in Germany. So the story behind this was I had come up with the title Dark Superstition pretty early on, like in the process. And it was like, yeah, that's it. That's it. And then for our album covers are, there's usually in the past, there's not really like a center focus on it. I guess the tank is different, but that's not our full like album cover. I like to keep it a little bit more vague, and I like to keep it, like the Deserted cover is a perfect example. There's just like, it's like that meme where it's like name one thing in this photo, you know.
Yeah.
But there's just a lot to look at, so it's not like, oh, this is like a woman, or there's not a figure. It's just like, not sure what it is, or it's like there's so much going on, I have to really like kind of get lost in it. And I know that that's what I wanted. That to me, that's like, those, any of the classic Seagrave covers or Ed Repka or any of that stuff, there's, that's what a death metal full length looks like to me. So it's got to be like, I'm pretty, is for our album covers, I want it to be hand painted. I don't want it to be digital, which, some people are really, I could be fooled nowadays of people, looking at something and be like, I could have never guessed that you did this on an iPad, on Procreate, but for our album covers, I would prefer if it's, actually painted. So, and the story with this is that originally, do you know who Karmazid is?
Oh yeah, Patrick.
Yeah. So Karmazid was originally supposed to do the album cover. You heard it here first.
Really?
So I was talking with him for a while because he had done a couple at the time. This was a couple years ago now when I was getting into it. He had just done that Lamp of Murmur cover. That's like painted style.
Eternian Bloodstorm, I think.
Yeah, and at that time, I was actively like looking for like who's going to do the next Gatecreeper cover, and that popped up, and I was like, "This is it," because he's another person that has multiple styles. His like painting style is much different than his like graphic, like pen and ink style.
Amazing artist.
Yeah, he's awesome. So we talked about it for a long time, and I think that he eventually decided to like kind of bow out a little bit, where he didn't feel like he could do it as well as it should be done. Which I feel like he could have done it. I think he got a little, frustrated for whatever reason. But what ended up happening is like, I can't do it, but he gave me some suggestions, and Lena was one of them, because they know each other from home, I think.
Both German, yeah.
Yeah, so he's the one, it was like, I can't do this, but I'm not gonna like leave you high and dry. Here's some suggestions. I hit up Lena, and it all worked out. And then Karmazid did the title on there, and then on the back of the record, he ended up doing a bunch of his like text titling on the back. So he was involved. I'm glad that he was still involved, and I'm glad, I'm happy with how the record cover turned out. And I gave her several different references of different things. Could be other album covers or just things that I'd found. I was really into the lightning motif. Also like the purple. I wanted to be like a nighttime scene, whereas say Deserted is like a daytime landscape. I wanted it to be in the same universe, but like the nighttime, a darker feel to it, and then incorporate some of the album or lyrical themes, and also Arizona. Obviously we gotta throw some desert shit in there. But yeah,
is that
it
the
turned out
glass
really.
shatter part with the lyrical themes? Is that how it connects?
Yeah. There's a song on the album Masterpiece of Chaos that I would say that is like a direct relation to. There's some like spider theme too. There's some like little hidden things on there. There's definitely, when she first sent it to me, like if you look up on there on the top right, there's some sections that like, it's like it's like the paint, like it didn't get super saturated, or there's almost like some wear on the paint or on the
just like
the actual
thinner.
canvas. And I was like, is this finished? Like, is that supposed to be there? But I think it's cool. It gives it kind of like a, I definitely tried to not make anything look fake vintage, like like a fake, like, a Pink Floyd shirt that you could buy at Target that has that shitty, like, fake vintage brush on it. I never
Yeah.
want anything to look like that. But if it's like an organic sort of like fading to it, I really grew to enjoy that part of the album cover, which is something at first I was like, I'm not sure about that, but I grew to love it. We definitely had me. I have a friend, Colin Fletcher. Shout out Colin, that helps me out with a lot of technical Photoshop stuff I was talking about. So for this album cover, we definitely had to do a little bit of surgery, a little bit of smoke and mirrors in the section where the logo is, just so that make sure that it sits on there. So there was some magic that we had to do onto the actual painting there, but other than that, it's pretty much exactly as it was sent to me.
Is it basically just so the logo pops enough? Is that like essentially what it is? Like enough
Yeah,
contrast?
yeah, and also when you're laying digital overlays on something analog, you know,
Yeah.
what I've learned is that you have to get it right on the type of textures and grains and even a little bit of blur or whatever it is, even if it's the most subtle thing on the edges, like just to really, I would call it like sinking it in, so that
Yeah.
it feels like it's all one piece of paper rather than something stacked onto top of it. So there's definitely a lot of like tweaking that's done just for something simple like that on top of like an album cover for me.
Very cool. Um, you can tell me like what speed to go here. We're at
I probably got
what's
like 5 minutes left. So
okay. Well, you recently did like a collage show. I thought that was pretty sweet, and then similar graphic for a flyer for a show as of this date next week.
yeah. So I got asked by a friend to join an art show that they were putting together, and I'd never done anything like that. Um, I've been kind of against it. I don't know. Like I've never made art for art's sake before. It always has a function. I'm not gonna like show a band's shirt design in an art show. But he kind of like prompted me and kind of like motivated me, like, yeah, it would be fun to do this. I wanted to do like a big scale collage. Originally, my plan was to make it huge, like make it like 10 feet tall. But the logistics of that wasn't uh, what I was capable of at the time. So I think it ended up being like, I don't know, probably like 4 feet wide or something. Um, but yeah, while I was making that, it was, it's a crazy collage of a bunch of different stuff. And while I was making that, I needed to make a flyer for the Gatecreeper show. And I had this reference image that demon guy. I found it in an old magazine, and it was like some sort of article about demons. And it
I've never
definitely went,
seen anything like it. It's weird looking.
so I definitely jacked it from that. And then, when I was making the collage, I was like, "Oh, I already got this. This is cool. I'll put this on the flyer too." So it was cool. It was the first time that I had, made art for art's sake. There was no function to it.
That's cool, man. And then
Ooh.
these are from your Xerox book, right?
Yeah, so the book that got put out was like kind of like an anthology of a bunch of different artists, like all Xerox artists. It was really cool. By an artist in Spain, I think they're at, or they might be in Italy. Um, but yeah, and they even got it like, sponsored by Vans. It's not available in the US yet, but the book is really cool. This stuff was probably in there. I think this is some of the stuff I submitted, but these are good ones. That Full of Hell one is like was a big one for me. Like I got a lot of interest in graphic design coming my way once I did that, because I kind of just started and I was friends with Full of Hell and I just did it, and then they ended up using that for years. Like they used that as a backdrop for festivals. They ran that shirt back how many, like they used that design for so long that I had to change the logo on it. Like they're like, we have a new logo, can you put it on there? So they got some miles out of that one, but I think it still holds up. That nails one too. That was that was probably right after, and that's like direct result of the Full of Hell one. That was probably 2016. That Joy was a band. I think they broke up, but there's kind of like a they were. I didn't really know them. I can't remember how I got connected with them, and I made that. I did like a layout of some sort for them for like a 7 inch and maybe a couple of shirt designs. I think that they might be a North Carolina band and they were, somehow friends with like the Holy Mountain people, or I think that maybe that's how I got involved. But that particular image in the middle, at the time, I would like post my portfolio, I guess, on Tumblr. And that image in
Mara.
particular, that Joy one, went platinum on Tumblr for some reason. I think that I don't think people even knew that it was a band. Like Joy was the band. I think that they just saw it as like a fun, like Joy of Nothing, like a very gothic Tumblr sort of thing.
It's
So
like
like
perfect for
people
it.
shared the shit out of it, but I'm like, you don't even know what this is. Sure.
That's funny. I thought these were
All
cool.
right. Yeah, these are two that I did. I definitely was having fun with doing like, I won't say mixed media, but like having different texture, or like, having like a photo and then an illustration, and having that sort of within that Xerox world, having different, like a little bit of different looks. That
Yeah.
Gatecreeper one, that's something that I probably found in a zine and then just, did my thing to it, put some pen to it. Go to the next slide. I think, oh yeah. So those were all shirt designs that I had done. These are all kind of old now, or that's a flyer in the middle. For the next one, oh, okay, yeah, this one, that little ugly man one for sure. Like I was definitely trying a bunch of shit out. Like if you zoom in on that, like there's a lot of different textures, and like there's like a photo format. There's a photo setting on the Xerox machine that you can. It adds like just an automatic like halftone to it. So I did that on everything separately, and it looks kind of crazy. Hold on. Oh, we're good. But yeah, and then also that body one was a big one for me getting into like design stuff. I love that one. That's probably one of my favorite things that I ever did, especially for that time. It was a long sleeve, so there was like stuff on the
I remember
sleeves,
that shirt.
and yeah, and that was like I still love that sort of stuff, and that's when I started collecting like old like crap hounds and all that, like just clip art imagery stuff, QSL cards, stuff like that. So that was me digging into that and starting, more of a like kind of a folky look to it.
Yeah, for sure. And that's they sold that through the Holy Mountain store, I think, right?
Yeah, they ran that one for a while. And actually, shout out to the body, shout out Lee and Tip, great people, some of my favorite people I've ever met through music. And they did a rare thing. And they were like, "Hey, we're going to reprint these. Is that okay?" Or like, "Hey, do we need to?" They might have even gave me more money. Like, which is crazy. We don't really reprint shirts very often. Usually, it's like done for one tour and then it will go to the online store. But it's very normal for bands to reuse designs a lot,
Yeah.
and I can see how artists might sometimes feel a little exploited, where it's like, oh, you only paid me this much and now you sold 5,000 of the shirt. I mean, that's a whole different conversation as far as structure of how people should be compensated. But I will say for that body one, that was the first time someone was like, "Hey, we want to print these again. Is that okay with you?" I was like, "Sure."
That's
Yeah, I mean,
awesome.
all right.
And I think we're getting to, we can cut off whenever, but these were the flyer releases for the tour before, right?
Yeah.
Like 2023 one.
At least those ones on the left, yeah, and then the one on the right's Oscar Bonin. That was for a Euro flyer. Oscar Bonin's a really sick tattoo artist in Australia. He's done shirt designs for us, and we actually got to hang out with him when we were there a couple months ago. He tattooed me and a couple other people.
Very cool. I think this is it. Well, you got the Australia poster in the middle there. Did you do that one?
Yeah,
I like that one a lot.
I did. I did do that. Yeah. That was, I'm constantly trying out new things that might not seem that much different, but that I was like, let me try to digitally color in this, Xerox thing that I have. So I was doing that a lot, and that was one of the first ones I did that on. The right was like a weird collage, and I like definitely like drew on the blood and did all kinds of crazy shit on that. And it's funny you have these all in a row because the one on the left is not Australian show, but the guy who made that, Thomas Sweetman, is from Australia. So it's very funny that you put those all together.
Just trying to pair them
Hey,
up.
you must have known.
Time. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I got to roll, but this was very fun, and we should do it again.
Yeah, just one quick second. Let me just say bye, and then I want to show you something very quickly.
Sure.
But for everybody watching, thank you. Support Chase. Gatecreeper is going to be on tour, and new episodes every week. See you guys.